They want to be a convicted felon before the election.
But do you think it's going to harm?
No, it'll make you more popular. They're morons. Greetings, I'm Sebastian Gorka. I served as Deputy Assistant for Strategy to President Trump. I'm the host of the America First radio show in the United States.
Well, Dr. Gorka, one thing that has come through in a lot of the interviews we've done with people who are close to Donald Trump in the first term was that during that first administration, there was this feeling that the president was stymied by some of those around him. You were there. What was it like?
Stymied doesn't even come close. We had actual subversive elements at the highest levels of the administration sabotaging the president every day. Now, when we came in, I didn't use the phrase deep state. I thought it was a little bit tinfoil hatty, and no, I'm not going to use that. Then I saw it. We had people like that constantly undermining what we were doing. It is remarkable that he achieved what he did because of what we saw, whether it was, people like Miles Taylor writing the anonymous article in the New York Times. It is stunning how the unelected bureaucracy thought they had a right to blockade a man chosen by 63 million Americans to be the president. It was stunning. It's truly stunning. We had people who came in as volunteers to the administration, took the taxpayer-funded paychecks, and subverted the will of the American people every single day. When that man, who is now leader of the opposition, to use an Anglo term, who is trouncing the current incumbent Biden in 5 of the 6 battleground states, is currently facing prison. We've arrived. This isn't deep state. This is in-your-face banana republic stuff.
Let's cast forward. Let's have a look. Donald Trump's leading. Let's say he wins the election. What's going to be different? How is he going to be more organised on day one? How do you see a new Trump administration going?
I think he's learnt a lot. And of course, we've identified. In the last 8 years, we know who the real Trump supporters are, who America First are. The John Boltons who were brought in and then can't wait now to go on CNN to slag off the president. The John Boltons of the world will not be inside the building now. But it is the most important thing. God willing, if we win, personnel. Things look good. But my biggest concern is not winning the election. My biggest concern is if we win, personnel. Reagan had this very famous phrase, personnel is policy.
Doesn't the president, though, if it's Donald Trump or whoever, need people in there who will challenge his view and sometimes say, no, Mr. President?
This isn't a question. No, this is not a question of yes man. This is not having subversives. This is the people who hate him don't believe it, but this guy, he doesn't like yes men. First thing he does when you walk in the door after he says, how's Katie, how's your wife, because his memory is stunning, he says, so what do you think of the speech I gave yesterday? Or what do you think of the whatever? And it's not pablum, it's not, just boilerplate. He's very curious of your opinion. For example, one of my proudest moments in the White House, every 6 months, we had to re-up the Obama-Iran deal. Either stop it or re-up it, this thing that was basically going to give the mullahs a nuke. President Trump wanted to get rid of it, we knew, but he wanted to have a discussion. So what happened? One day he had the whole cabinet in the Oval, and he called me and Steve Bannon in. He called us his heavies. And he said, all right, my heavies, tell everybody here why the Iran deal is bad. And we did the quintessential Washington elevator pitch, why it's bad for the region, why it's bad for Israel, why it's bad for America and for nuclear proliferation. And then there was a big debate, right? Most of the cabinet were wieners who said, oh my gosh, you can't piss off the Europeans. You can't cancel it. This is about American interest, not what the Madam Chancellor of Germany wants. Is about American interests. And so it's not yes men we're talking about. We're talking about not actually having people who are anti-America first and anti the writ of the American people.
Donald Trump has said about his first term, just as you have, that the biggest mistake he had was personnel around him.
Right.
And he said, look, he said to his supporters, I will be your retribution if I win again.
Correct.
What does he mean by being their retribution?
He means the following. I just had a woman on my show, she's called the January 6th grandmother. On the January 6th protests, she didn't hit anybody, she didn't steal anything. She's a woman of great faith, she walked into Congress through open doors. For 10 minutes, she stood inside Congress and prayed. We call her the praying grandmother.
So you believe they're hostages like President Trump?
Absolute political prisoners, utterly.
And you agree with the pardoning of them? If Donald
Anyone
Trump...
who didn't, hit a policeman or, break through the doors, utterly, completely full and unconditional pardon, absolutely. The Department of Justice is out of control. These people their families deserve retribution. But it's not just January 6th. We just had the FBI admit 250,000 Americans were surveilled without a warrant because of their online activity.
Well, I want to talk about undocumented migrants. President Trump has said, these migrants are basically poisoning the blood of the country.
Uh-huh.
Do you agree with that language?
Yeah, totally. Utterly.
Why?
Because I know what normal immigration looks like. If you don't have borders, you have nothing. You have nothing. These numbers are quite, for normal countries, these numbers are hard to ingest.
But how is it poisoning the blood of the country? That's what I want to understand. I want to understand that.
Well, many ways. Fentanyl. 110,000 Americans died of drug overdoses and fentanyl.
And
just think of that for a second.
Do you agree then with President Trump or Donald Trump when he says the day one of his presidency, if he wins re-election, he'll start the largest mass deportation operation in American history?
We have to. So it is obscene that Joe Biden has made the cartels billionaires overnight, and he's affected on the worst day ever, 12,000 illegals in one day. 8 million that we know of in 3 years. Now, who are these people? My parents were real refugees. My father escaped from a communist prison. If he'd gone back to the nation of his birth, he would have been shot on sight as an escapee from a communist prison. These people are 8 million escapees. We have no idea how they got here or who they are. How did they come into this country? This is when you realize how cynical it is. There's something called the CBP One app. An illegal is sitting in Mexico, in Guatemala, in China, and they download the taxpayer-funded CBP One app. And they certify themselves as an asylum seeker. I, Mickey Mouse, am an asylum seeker. When they arrive at the border, they show the guy, hey, I'm registered. Nobody's being interviewed. Do you know the court dates? Again, don't believe anything I say. Look it up. The millions of illegals who are being let in right now, self-registering as asylum seekers. Do you know what court dates they're being given for immigration hearings? 2035. 2035. So it's like a Monty Python skit. This is about buying votes, nothing else.
So how big of an issue for this 2024 presidential poll will undocumented migrants, how big will it be?
This is, I cannot express. The word irony just doesn't cover it. If you think about, why did my former boss get elected in 2015? Think about 2015, 2016. Americans, as an immigrant, a legal immigrant, I find it amusing, I have to remind my fellow Americans what they did in 2016, because there's something very historic that they did. Every president from George Washington to Obama was linked. In what way? Because they were Democrats, they were Whigs, they were Republicans. Every single president in the history of America was a member of the political elite. They were senators, congressmen, governors, retired generals. Every single one of them was of those 4 categories. Along comes a realtor and a reality TV show star from Manhattan who's never run for... nobody becomes president the first time they run. Along comes Donald Trump says, oh yeah, I want to be president. And he wins! 63 million Americans say, screw you, to the whole schlep. Democrat, Republican, Independents, we've had it. As my friend Dan Bongino says, the radio host, it was a double-barreled middle finger to the political elite. There's not much difference between the establishment, When I was in the White House, I used this phrase, I used it since I left it, Donald Trump won despite the Republican Party, not thanks to the Republican Party, because they wanted somebody who's an outsider. That's what happened in 2016. So how did he do that? How does the complete rank outsider win the first time he runs? Well, number one, everyone who voted for him realized what I realized when I sat down with him. And the reason it was very easy for me to say yes to be his advisor is within 30 seconds I realized He hates political correctness, and he loves America. Yes, he loves America and he wants to fix it. What was the key issue of 2016? Build the wall. The key issue was immigration.
And that'll be again, you think
If
2024?
you're smart, what would the Democrats have done for the last 7 years? Run from immigration. Oh, we need the wall or blah, blah, which is what they did for 30 years. Look at videos of Biden look at Clinton. Obama said, we cannot have illegals coming. Obama said it. So if you're smart and not driven by hatred, what is the one issue the Democrats should not have given President Trump? Just one. Immigration. Instead of staying away from it, they haven't trebled down. They've 100 times, 1,000-fold worse. 8 million illegals that we know of in 3 years. You're literally putting him back in office thanks to the issue that you put him in office for the first time. These people are asinine. Stunning.
What should Donald Trump do if he's re-elected with the Department of Justice?
Yeah. So when I came in and I realized the deep state is real, I realized the FBI is bad, which is really hard for me to say because I trained a lot of these guys. CIA is bad. But I realized of all of these agencies and departments, the DOJ is the worst. The DOJ is a viper's nest of politically motivated individuals who see it as their fiefdom to serve the Democrat Party and their buddies. What do? My suggestion is very simple. You can't change the culture of 2 million people, but you can give them incentives and disincentives, and this is my recommendation. Within the first 30 days of the Trump administration, if God willing we win, the truly independent individuals, former prosecutors, professionals who know the law, have to identify the worst malefactors in every department. And I mean from DOJ to the Department of Agriculture. People who've stolen, people who've perverted the course of justice, who've denuded Americans of their civil rights. And department by department, you identify the 2 worst criminals, you arrest them, and you perp walk them out of the building in shackles like they did to Peter Navarro in front of the CNN cameras, and they stand trial outside of DC.
You don't think that has a touch of McCarthyism about it? Like
No, I mean,
finger pointing amongst colleagues?
McCarthyism is what? McCarthyism usually today, I mean, he was right. There were subversives everywhere. How did I preface my statement? Actual criminals. People who have clearly stolen millions, denuded people of their civil rights, the worst of the worst.
So you think the DOJ is full of sort of political animals who work for
Utterly. I know.
Right.
I know, I can tell you.
And what do you think when Donald Trump says, he'd like to appoint a special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden should he win?
Absolutely.
You think that's proper, given what...
When you're a senator, the only place you can look at classified documents is in the SCIF, the Secure Compartmented Information Facility of the Senate. You can't walk around with them. You can't take them home and put them in a cardboard box next to your Corvette. We found top secret documents from his time, not as president, not as vice president, senator. What were they about?
And what do you think about if Donald Trump becomes president again, should he be able to shut down any federal case against him once he becomes president, if they're still ongoing?
It's a federal accusation of miscategorization of business funds, which should have been paid for out of the campaign. It's a federal crime. It's not a state New York crime. Should a case like that continue, where every jurisdiction has said no, and then one of them changes its mind and brings in a woman who gets paid to have sex on camera as their star witness, who on the stand says, I talk to dead people because I'm a medium? I think things like that are a waste of taxpayer money and should probably be shut down. We've got the State Department right now writing diplomatic demarches to countries in Latin America saying, do not try and put your opposition leader in prison. It's a tad ironic, isn't it? Biden's State Department saying other nations, other banana republics shouldn't use the judicial system as a political weapon. How about we start at home?
The 2024 election, the November election, how's your feeling on whether it'll be free and fair?
Tough. all I know is, it's everybody's responsibility. If you are a Democrat, a Republican, independent, libertarian, you should want the elections to be free and fair. In my state, the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is allegedly run by a Republican, we have 45 days of voting. That's absurd. France is voting on one day with paper ballots and the results are in by 10 o'clock. What do we do? 45 days of voting? That's not election day, that's not election month, it's election month and a half. That's a recipe for fraud. The only response is we have to take responsibility.
Joe Biden,
Yeah.
is he fit to be president once again?
It's a man who has had 2 brain aneurysms before he became president. It's frightening because 24/7 within 30 feet of that man is the nuclear football. He can press a button and initiate Armageddon.
Put simply, what needs to change in this country, if you could sum it up?
First things first, Americans need to take responsibility for their nation. There's an anecdote told about Benjamin Franklin, and an elderly woman asked Franklin, what do we have, sir? And he said, madam, a republic for as long as you can keep it. We have to understand that it's our republic. It's not the Republican parties, it's not the Democrat parties, it's not the bureaucracy, it's our republic, and we have to get engaged. Secondly, Lady Justice has to have her blindfold put back on. Most elections are determined economically. People look at their pocketbook, has inflation gone up, the price of petrol, what have you. Now it's different. It's about people who look at a system that is out of control. When you see 8 million illegals in 3.5 years, 9% inflation, it's more than just politics as usual. So what has to happen? People have to get engaged. We have to put a blindfold back on Lady Justice, and really, America first. The interests of the American people must be represented by the people in Washington, D.C.
And just, concisely, how will a second Trump administration be different to the first?
Well, he won't have to compromise with Democrats because he won't have to compromise with rhinos because he can't be reelected, so he can just drain the swamp, and because we'll have people who won't be sabotaging him on the inside.
You mentioned earlier that he sounded you out about a role. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Being asked to serve for president isn't an honor, it's a duty. So if he wants me back, he said he wants me back, then yes, I of course go back. I've said that obviously my background is national security, so if I can help him there, absolutely. But my greater concern is personnel. I'm not exactly excited about being head of HR, but as somebody who could maybe do vetting for people at the highest level, it's probably the most important question in the next Trump administration. If God willing, we have the blessings of the American people.